Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I am Shogun. Thank you to the live audience for joining us. Thank you to the recorder, Weaverbot, and Craig, I guess. Thank you to anyone joining us on YouTube or a podcast platform. We're also on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, Tumblr, Periscope, you name it. And then also we have a Minecraft server. We're on the roundtablediscord.com. And join us through conspiracy theory or politics on Discord or the Roundtable Discord. Just Google it. Boom. All right. So today we're doing a roundtable on paranormal experiences. So we're going to go from top to bottom. And everybody gets their turn on the mic. You get as much time as you want, no time limit. And the topic is just tell us about one or more paranormal experiences you had in your life. Things that were mysterious, strange, unusual, from UFOs to ghosts or whatever. So, that being said, we're going to start with Ainsof. I'm pretty sure you can tell us at least one story that was kind of supernatural for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually did a course called Holographic Kinetics, and I'll put the URL in the general chat. It's holographickinetics.com. And what it is, it's an advanced Aboriginal modality with quantum healing techniques. And during one of the sessions we had, basically people were laying on a massage table. The instructor would put two fingers at the S-geode points to the back of the neck, basically where the energy crystals would crystallize in the back of the neck, and it would dissolve when there's pressure placed on them, and it will release energy. Anyway, some people were on the table, and entities would surface. That would be supposedly inhabited by entities, whether that be extraterrestrial, whether that be draconian, reptilian, various other forms of ET, as well as potential spiritual demonic entities. In one particular case, there was this guy on the table, and he started to freaking, I would swear he would be shape-shifting in front of me. His eyes turned into these cat-like eyes. His legs would curl up, his arms would curl up like a bat, and he would be hissing and spitting at everyone in the room. And he spat on the instructor, and the instructor would pin him down with 3 fingers at the sternum, just with energetic, not forcefully, and would basically read him his rights and send him to his own universe. Because with the holographic kinetics, it is said that each individual has their own created universe, and when you combine with another individual that has another created universe, it creates a third universe with a combined energy of both. So it would send the entity back in time to their own universe, which they'd live in solitude, and then bring them back into the body, and would I say, are you ready to leave this body with free will, or do we have to send you back? And the entity at that point would be screaming in agony and would basically leave the body at that point. And there were various other stories, cases. I don't remember. This was back in 2007, so it was quite a long time ago. But it made me realize that, either all these people who paid for the course are either making it up, or they were really going through something paranormal. So yeah, that's an experience that I had, and made me realize that there's things out there that are unseen and not part of mainstream. But yeah, holographic kinetics uses the Aboriginal Dreamtime healing. And yeah, if you go through the website, it explains a lot of the processes, it explains a lot of the theories and philosophies behind what we were doing in the course. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Ainsof. Fantastic. Maybe we'll come back around if we have time. That's a great start. Anna, you ever had a ghost story, a UFO, anything paranormal in your life you could relate to us?
Well, I only really have one, honestly. And so it was like I was 13ish, and I have a great grandfather on my granny's side, and I've never seen him before. He died well before I was born. And I was in the basement, I was doing laundry, and I saw this figure. He was tall, um, I'd say about 6 foot, 6'3" ish. Denim pants, denim jacket, and a red and black plaid work shirt with work boots. Um, Blonde hair, bluish green eyes, kind of like deep blue with flakes of like green. It was really weird. And I was asking my granny about it, and she pulled out a picture of her father, which is, my great grandfather, someone who I've never seen pictures of before, someone who I've never even known of the existence of. And he matched the description like perfectly. It freaked me out still to this day.
Fascinating. Thank you. I know Belushi said he doesn't have a story, but do you have a story?
Yeah, I got one story. Well, I can't tell you what exactly it was, but I converted THC into a synthetic compound once, and I smoked it, and I knew what I was doing, but it's one of those things that almost no one has ever done. It's like higher echelon random scientific research. It's not really a thing that, like I said, is common, but it it took 25 minutes to kick in, and for about 2 weeks afterwards, I actually saw ghosts, and at one point I had a door open in front of me that was closed. It wasn't like 2% open and the wind blew it open, and I just sat there and heard noises that were coming from nowhere, as in like they were coming from inside me for like half an hour. And in my life, that's the only experience I've ever had that I would even say comes close to unexplainable paranoia, para whatever.
All right. Thank you. Belushi. Duke Silver, you there?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Pass. Gotham, paranormal experiences of any kind in your life?
Yeah, I have one. When I was in like the third grade, and I was playing at about like I'd say 9 p.m. and next to this break wall, and behind me was like two apartment buildings, right? And there was no light sources, so it was pretty dark. Besides like light sources, from apartment windows at night, and then there was this car driving by, and like then there's like this light spot on the break wall, and I see this shadow on the light spot, and it's like a humanoid. And at first I thought it was my shadow, but I looked back and there was no one else. uh so I waved at the shadow because I was a kid and I was wondering, curious, because it looked nothing like me. It was like a humanoid, but it was like very fat or whatever. So I waved at the shadow, and the shadow didn't wave back immediately. It waved back like a second after. So like the waving motions are not synchronized. So then I looked back and there was no one else, and I so I waved at the shadow again, and it waved back, and like 1 second after. So it was pretty creepy. Yeah. So
Wild. Is there any more to the story?
um well, I remember I looked back, like between me and the light source, because there was uh the car light, and there was no one in between. So you'd figure maybe it was the driver like playing with me, messing with me, but but it's not possible because the light source is in front of the driver. Driver was inside, or he was outside, or whatever. But there was just no one else between me and the light spot. But there was a shadow on the brake wall. And I waved at it, and it didn't wave back at me at the same time, but I waved back. So
Creepy.
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Pretty cool. Thank you. Normal guy.
You're welcome.
Do you have a paranormal experience to share?
I have 3 short ones, if that's all right.
Sure.
All right. So the first one, back when my grandmother decided to no longer want to be around, after the coroners had come and removed the remains, for the next couple of days, my dad, who never talks in his sleep, was holding constant conversations with grandma and arguing with her in his sleep. And from what this sounds like, it sounded like he was pissed off, and whoever he was arguing with was telling him that it didn't matter and that there was plenty of food in the fridge and all the laundry was done and the house was clean. So that was really fucking weird. And when I was about 19 or 20, one of my first jobs, I went over to a coworker's house, turn of the last century house, so 19th century, early 1800s. We were having a party. I couldn't be in the house. My vision would get blurry and I'd get really nauseous and I'd have to lean on something and I'd feel fine once I was outside, but inside I was only one getting sick. Third and final story. I was sleeping over at one of my dad's friend's houses when I was younger. Spent the night, and I thought I saw a lady sit on my bed, and when I woke up in the morning, there was a new pair of socks on the bed. Well, not new as in like from the store, but new as in they weren't mine, and no one else claimed them, so that was weird. Those are my 3 stories of the supernatural. Or the ghost.
Thank you, normal guy. Data, do you by any chance have a story you'd like to share? Going once, twice, 3 times. All right, that brings us to NSA. NSA, I know you have at least one story you can tell.
Yeah, well, I have my alien story. I literally have had nothing paranormal happen prior to that. I had like the only thing I can think of is when I was probably like 12. I had some fever dreams that gave me some really weird like night terror type stuff. But really, throughout my entire life, I had never experienced paranormal, nor was I afraid of the paranormal or anything else. So I just happened to meet the creator of paranormal at 29 years old.
Well, tell us that story then.
Well, no, it's my whole alien story, man. It's
Well, tell us at least the part when you saw the squid thing.
Got in a fight with a douchebag in the NSA. It had me followed, and then all of a sudden, paranormal shit started happening. Hearing voices. Then we get this holographic, you know, squid that floats into my room and it starts trying to go into my eyes. After days of keeping me awake and being right in front of me, I finally fall asleep and wake up with my ears ringing and my eyes sparkling. And then I could remote view, and now I was a mystic from the old times, a prophet, and all this other bullshit. Or, as they like to call it in modern times, a schizophrenic. Because I got it implanted by an extraterrestrial. So it's not really paranormal, because paranormal means not normal, I guess, whereas, like, paranoid, like, it's not paranoia if it's something really happening. So, like...
But just tell us what you remember about when the squid thing came in and what happened.
It was like 3 a.m. Went into my cat. I freaked out, thought it possessed my cat. I didn't know what it was. Was it a god? We'd already figured out it was an alien at that point prior to the actual implant coming in the room. So I kind of knew. I thought it was like the alien or something at first, but I realized that it was just carbon nanotube device being powered remotely by microwaves to form whatever shape it wanted to, including the octopus shape that it showed me. Then it would spin around my eye, calibrating like it was going to go in. I mean, it kept me awake for days. I even went to the bar and had a drink. It followed me into the bar. And all the guys, I was just freaking out. I didn't really know what to do, so I was just having a drink. Yeah, I don't know, man. It was foreign and domestic, indeed. That's all I got.
All right. Well, that comes to me then, and then Sir Dougleton, and then Sir Paulie, and then Weaver. So I have a whole whack of different stories, and I don't want to tell too many. I'm trying to think which would be the most meaningful ones to tell in terms of supernatural kind of experiences. I mean, I've had confirmation that psychic powers are real, and I can explain this very, very quickly. So one example, I was walking with a friend down my front street, and he said, "Hey, last night I dreamt that you and I were walking down the street, and then an ambulance followed by 2 fire trucks came around the corner. And then sure enough, a few minutes later, you hear the sirens, ambulance turns, 2 fire trucks, ambulance go by." So he called it, and I was like, "Damn, you called it." And I've called shit too. I've told the story of the flipping the one particular card and knowing it was going to be flipped. And when the person came around and accelerated and hit my friend, but I'd already run and hid behind a fence without even knowing why. Like literally like Spider-Man, right? Like not comparing myself to that, but it's the same concept of like that danger sense triggered. So I know that there is such a thing as like precognition and shit for sure. You can weirdly predict the future. It's definitely possible. There's the whole thing about meeting Satan that I've talked about before was pretty weird. Supernatural experience. I've seen UFOs. That was trippy. Oh yeah, I wanted to tell the story of the ghost-like experience. So I had a cabin. My family had a series of cabins out in the Canadian wilderness or whatever. And one of them, the best one, was out on a point. It was like all water on 3 sides, a little land bridge, whatever. And I was out there by myself one time, and there's a lot of artifacts and shit there. And it was a good spot for fishing, canoeing, whatever. So whatever. But I was out there by myself, and I just had this feeling like ghosts, like something just like went up and down my spine. I got like a tingle up and down my spine. I was by myself. I was like, just got like a spooky feeling. I was like, what the fuck, whatever. Go to bed, lie down by myself, turn the lights off, get under the covers, and then I hear this loud crash from inside the cabin. But I know all the doors and windows are locked, but something fucking crashed inside the cabin. And I'm literally like, I don't want to get out of bed. But I was like, you have to. Don't be a bitch. Like, go check out what this was. So I get up, I go out, and it's a picture of me as a baby that's fallen off the wall and crashed. And it all around it says like hope, dreams, love, this, that. And it's a picture of me as a baby, and it falls. I'm like, there's no movement in the cabin. Everything's still and like locked down, like weird. And then I'm like, whatever. I go to sleep, fall asleep, and I wake up with a light shining bright in my eyes. And I wake up, I'm like, what the fuck? And I get up, and there's a flashlight on the dresser across the room from me, somehow pointed directly at my eyes. And it's somehow turned on in the middle of the night. And I get up, and I look at this flashlight, and the only way to turn it on is to hold one side of it and twist it 180 degrees. And that turns it on, and you have to twist it 180 degrees to turn it off. So I'm thinking in the middle of the night, this thing probably spun on top of the dresser to face directly into my eyes. Then something invisible held both sides of it and twisted it to turn it on. And I'm like, that is impossible. It's a supernatural being has to be that did this, because I obviously would not have fallen asleep with a flashlight in my eyes. It turned on in the night, and it wasn't like a switch. You had to literally grasp it with 2 hands and twist it. It was a ghost or something. There's no other explanation, basically.
Or sleepwalking. Just saying.
Sleepwalking and turning a flashlight on and then lying down and then going back to sleep and then waking up to light in your eyes.
Yeah, that's normal. People drive their cars. People make food when they sleepwalk. It's not. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you could be right. To me, it was fucking weird, but who knows? But that's one story, and I could go on. I saw UFOs, but that's as simple as lights in the sky.
Are cryptids considered? Oh, apologies.
Yeah, of course, cryptids. Have you seen cryptids, normal guy?
I believe so. Once with my dad.
We'll tell that story for sure.
My dad taught me about the Ojibwe reservation. I've said this before. Belushi or no, someone else. I can't remember anymore. So ever since the 70s, there's been something weird that happens when the northern lights are going on in the summertime out by the reservation. And Dad saw it back in the 70s and figured he'd take me out there, and we were sitting out there by where the railroad tracks used to run through for the logging camps. And maybe it was just suggestion, maybe it was just Dad and I bonding time and drinking and smoking together, but sure as shit, there was something out there. It looked kind of like a dog, but it was walking on two legs. Other than the northern lights and the moonlight, no lights on out there, but looked like kind of a dog with a tail walking on two legs, and it was freaky as fuck.
Gnarly. That's awesome.
It didn't pay us no damn mind.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with people who swore they saw Bigfoot. And yeah, I've seen UFOs. Had experiences I thought were ghosts. Dougleton, you there?
I am. So, I've had a few experiences. My first very paranormal experience was it was on another conspiracy server specifically for Hollow Earth. And I had sent one of the more active members this book called The Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And on the very first page of it, it says, "Do not give this book to anyone who is unworthy, or else you be cursed." And I actually did hold a reservation that this guy, like, he was knowledgeable and all that, but he was still kind of unworthy because he's a bit of a spiritual skeptic. So, anyway, I sent him the book anyway. I asked if he read it. He said no. I asked if he read it again a couple weeks later, and he said yes. And the day he said yes, I had watched a bunch of videos on sleep paralysis, and I had heard different stories about it, and I didn't pay it any mind. So we talked a little about the book, and he said he didn't know what to make of it. This is a really weird book if you ever read it. But anyway, I go to bed that night, and I'm having a dream. I'm going down the street at my neighborhood, and the entire sky is lit up with stars. Like, there's no light pollution, and it's like more stars than I could ever count. And I'm trying to find one star to focus on that looks like it's a shooting star, because the whole sky is like literally every minute there's a few shooting stars. So I'm like looking for a star that's going to be a shooting star, and this thing comes up behind me, and it goes, and it's like a huge magnetic pulse I could feel, like a subwoofer, and like it's like dirty goosebumps if you ever had that, just like the creeps. And it pins me down in my dream, and I'm like in a fetal position in my dream, and like my dream gets sucked up through a straw, and like it's like if the vision in my dream were like a curtain or like a liquid, it literally got sucked up into a fine point, and there's like a literal veil between like where the dream's getting sucked up in my room. Like I could see my dream and my room at the same time. And I wake up in my bed, I'm in the same position, and I can't move. And I'm thinking, in my research, sleep paralysis and UFO abductions are very similar in their experience. So I'm like, okay, I'm having either a demonic attack or an alien abduction or something. Let's see how far this goes. And like this, whatever it was, it came up behind me, and it felt like it attached a hose in the middle upper part of my back, like right in the middle on my spine. And as soon as it did that, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let this go any further. I'm like, theoretically, if I call out to the name of Jesus Christ, it will stop and it will go away. And I try to open my mouth, and I can't even open my mouth. I'm like, okay, that's a little weird. So I go, what happens if I think of him? And I think in my head, Jesus Christ, Son of God, right? And instantly I can move again. It was like it literally felt like it just let go of me. And I get up out of bed and I start calling out to the name of Jesus a few more times, and there's a face darker than the shadow on my wall, and it's going up. And I have a light from my keyboard that points directly at the corner between my wall and my ceiling. And it's climbing up there, and when it gets to the light, I can see its face, and it's like a demonic looking, like alien invader or Japanese demon mask or something. And it but literally just a face, and it um it disappears into the corner between my ceiling and my wall, and it was just really weird. Another experience I had was I had gotten a necklace, and I ended up getting it from a Satanist store, and it felt like my room was haunted for like a few weeks. Um, I was having like little instances of sleep paralysis, like something would come over me, I get dirty goosebumps, and then I wake up and I go back to sleep, and then goosebumps again, and it would like seize me for 1 second. As soon as it did, I'd fight it off when I get up. And like later, when it got really bad, I was dozing off in my bed, and like something like slapped my bed right in front of my face. Like if someone like imagine if you like your friend or your parent or something came up and like slapped the bed right in front of your face in the bed. It was the same thing, and my bed was shaking when it happened. It happened once, and I'm like, whatever. I doze back off. It happened again. I'm like, whatever. It doze back off. It happened a third time, and then it woke me up, and I'm like, I didn't even open my eyes. I'm just like, go away. And it stopped. And I dozed back off again, and I woke up, and I'm floating 3 feet in my bed, like in the air. And like when I wake up and I realize this, I do like it's like a whiplash when I fall. Like I drop from whatever's making me float, and I land on my head first, and like I do a whiplash like from my shoulder down to my feet with my body. And I haven't had anything like that happen again. At least not to the severity. I've had a few more attacks in between what I mentioned and um, afterwards, but I'll let somebody else take the mic.
All right, thank you, Sir Dougleton. Sir Paulie, I know you
Yeah,
have something
buddy.
for us.
Yeah, I was a kid, probably about 5 years old, and my neighbors used to play outside a little bit longer than I did. My parents were kind of stricter or whatever. I was looking out the window, and it was later on. I'd probably been in bed for about an hour. Typical kid, doesn't go to sleep right away, plays with his toys, whatever. I looked outside, and what I seen was basically that image that I had posted earlier there of like the Wraith Kings or whatever from what is it? Not the Hobbit, the other one there, Lord of the Rings. And that's what I seen floating around in my neighbor's backyard. And they were going around the apple trees that they had out there, and they were calling me. So somehow I, as a kid, got my window open and all that stuff, got my screen open, and the next thing I remember is me waking up on the dirt. I fell down 10 feet, I guess, out of a window, and somehow I woke up knocking on the door. My mom's like, "How the hell did you get outside?" And still to this day, I don't know what the hell that is, what that could have been, but I don't know.
Do you have anything else you wanted to add on to that, Paulie?
I don't know. Like a lot of people could say, "Oh, it was like maybe an abduction or whatever," but I don't know. There's nothing really to add. Like I was so young, but like it was weird. Like how the hell could I fall 10 feet and not get hurt? You know what I mean? Or even be knocked out and then wake up on the dirt. Not remember falling, not remember anything. I just remember looking out the window and leaning, and that was it.
Fascinating. Ralph, my friend, have you ever had a paranormal experience, like a UFO, a ghost, anything supernatural?
I do have one in particular I can run by you guys.
Please do.
All right, so I used to be a caretaker at Restored House Museum. It's a big mansion built during the Gilded Age. And I started out giving tours there, but then they needed a caretaker, so I took that job on. And the very first time I was alone in the house by myself, some shit happened. And this house is pretty notorious for people having paranormal haunted type experiences in it. Which I didn't really know at the time. I mean, I'd heard a couple stories, but so anyway, I go. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. It's time for me to open, and I go and unlock the house and go inside, turn off the motion detectors. So there was no one in the house previous to me entering, and I start to do my routine inspection to open the house, go around, turn on all the lights, check for any leaks or anything like that, to get it ready for visitors for the day. And there's a piano in the house, which is a Steinway, and it's, you know, pretty priceless. It's a custom model. It's over 100 years old, so they don't normally let people play it, but I'm a pianist, and so, you know, I felt like I was gonna just have a sit down on it and play for a couple minutes, because, you know, I know it's good for pianos, and it's not like I was going to bang on it or anything. So I sat down and I played it a little bit. And the piano belonged to the lady of the house. And the very next room that I was going to go through afterwards was her bedroom. So I stood up when I was done and I went up the main staircase. And the moment that I stepped across the threshold of her bedroom door, I heard on the servant's side of the house, the opposite end of the same floor, I heard a door slam shut, an interior door, a really angry slam. And it had only been about 7 minutes total since I had deactivated motion sensors. And the entrances to the house are these huge doors that make a lot of noise when you open and shut them. So I was relatively certain there was no one in the house with me when I heard that. I ran to the other side, called out to see if I could find who was there, and there was no answer. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. And when I realized that something must have happened, I just said out loud, you know, well, I'm here because I really like this place and I want to help take care of it. And afterwards, I had a really good feeling, more than I had already developed whenever I was in and around the house. I felt like the house maybe was testing me or something, or some spirit there was just making sure my intentions were good. But yeah, after that, everything was cool. And later on, I found out that one of the most common experiences people have with the house is they hear these interior doors slamming on the servant's side. And I will say this because, you know, the biggest rebuttal, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, that's ever come up to this kind of thing, people will tell me that they'll say, well, maybe it was just air moving through the house. But the house is climate controlled. It's on a, you know, geothermal HVAC system, and there are no exterior doors or windows that sit open. So it wasn't as if this interior door got like shut due to pressure caused by air blowing in or out of doors or windows of the house. And that day that this happened, it was another like hour and a half almost before anyone else started showing up. So yeah, something must have happened, and I don't know what it was. Just real quick, like within 30 seconds, I'll say my opinion on what causes paranormal things that people usually call ghosts. I don't know if it's the spirit that's there. I kind of wonder too if it's possible that when people live in a place, they leave an imprint on it, sort of like magnetizing it in a way, perhaps, or what the explanation for these kind of phenomena are. But they're definitely, it's hard to deny that things do happen sometimes that are outside of our ability to explain.
Well said, Ralph. No disagreement from you there. That brings us to Weaverbot.
Sure. I mean, I have a couple of events, but I'm just gonna stick to one. That was, it was weird. So it was a sleep paralysis. It was a weird one though. It wasn't just, well, they're all weird, but this one was maybe a little bit more weird than the regular sleep paralysis that people experience. So what happened was I woke up And the time of the day was exactly before it got dark. When the sky is just blue, you know what I mean? But it's the twilight, it's just barely you can see the light. That's exactly when it was. So I had woken up, couldn't move, couldn't do anything. There were two grays. And I remember the first thing I thought in my head was, they're not that short. I don't know why that stuck to my head. I was like, wow, maybe I'm a midget then, because they didn't seem that short to me. I mean, they were shorter than me, which is short, but they were not that short, which is an idea that I had in my mind. Anyways, yeah, one of the grays was in the middle of the room and staring at the direction where my family was, because they were watching TV at that time. I was in my room, the door was closed. One of them was staring at the direction of the TV. The other one was looking at me, and was completely focused on me. The other one was completely focused, like as if you could see through the walls and look at that side. Now, the gray alien that was looking at me approached me slowly and put its hand exactly where my solar plexus is, and his hand or its hand went through. It was really weird. And I remember my heart rate and fear. I was freaking out. And the moment it went through, the whole thing repeated itself from the point that the guy was approaching, the alien, was approaching. So it was like a repeat, like a deja vu repeat. It was really freaking weird. Now, the weird thing about this, though, that disturbed me much later when I look back at it, is that I kept silent about this thing for approximately 2 weeks. For no reason. I was just silent. I didn't share with my sister. I didn't share with anyone, my family, friends, for over 2 weeks, which is not normal for me, normal behavior. I usually share shit like this. So that does seem a little weird. But I was unusually calm. I still remember that. Like the first thing that happened after that was I made tea, but went back to my room and just continued, like as if nothing had happened, even though I had fresh memory of it. So it was like a cool down period of not talking about it. But yeah, that's about it.
All right. So that would take us to Dorgan. Do you have a supernatural or paranormal experience for us?
I've definitely had a few. One of the podcasts, I guess, previous, I went into more detail of the other ones. I guess basic rundown of the few that I had already talked about, and then I'll give you one that I haven't talked about yet. The first experiences I had were, I don't know if you'd call it a sleep paralysis, but I would have visions. I would walk around my house with my eyes open, and I would see things that would, take up the entire vision that I was having, and I could feel like the tabletop or the countertop as I was walking around. I essentially did this a few times when I was about 11 years old. I'd just walk around the house crying, and my mom would try to hold me, and then she took me for CAT scans, and they realized that nothing was really wrong with me. So I used to have some weird visions. They always seemed to pertain to my father dying and saving me in the process. My dad had, I guess he'd been deceased for about 6 years prior to that. So that was, I guess, the first set of paranormal or something experiences anyway. The next ones that I had when I was about 16, I became kind of a shithead, and my mom couldn't handle me anymore. So she put me into foster care just because I was that bad. And between me going from my mom's house to foster care, I was put inside of a youth shelter. And this youth shelter was very old, actually. It was in the middle of a city, and it was one of the older buildings in the city that had kind of existed for a long time. A lot of negative things happened at that place. But I did experience some paranormal, ghostly activity. The first one, I guess, was I had a vision in bed, but I wasn't walking around. I felt trapped on my bed, incredible amount of pressure. And the vision I had was a city bus rolling down the street with a rock chasing it. And the three guys that were in the bedroom with me on different bunk beds kind of were standing over me and looking at me with my eyes open, having this vision. And then a number of things happened from there in that youth shelter. Closet doors would be open, clothes would be hanging out of it. And, right when we wake up in the morning and nobody had done it kind of deal. Things would move around in the room at night. The basement of that place was really creepy with some we weren't supposed to. We were we were advised not to play with any paranormal things or ask ghosts to do anything. But we ended up playing with what we knew as it was a ghost in the basement with a pool table. And we did an experiment with a screwdriver, and we said, wherever you are, wherever you want to be, point the screwdriver to where, that is. And we had sat at the top of the stairs and waited for about 2 hours playing Game Boys. And when we came down, the screwdriver was balancing on a piece of chalk, pointing straight up in the air. So that was super freaky. I definitely cried at 16 years old like a little girl. It was very freaky. So the last experience, the one that I haven't explained on a previous podcast, would be my mom had a boyfriend at one point, and I guess I would have been about 19 or 20. But he had invited me out for a hunt in a secluded place. I guess he had a house built. It's not even a hamlet. Like, I think there's 3 or 4 houses there, and his house was super old, and he only had a certain amount of rooms that you could actually sleep in at night. So after a day of hunting and smoking and drinking, he told me that I could take his son's old room, which was in basically the peak of the house. And you've seen those peak rooms where, the walls, there's only a certain spot you can stand straight up because the walls are peaked. And the bed was right under one of the peaks. And this one's probably the most profound, something that really hit me hard, because I was old enough to understand. Like, I guess I was when I was 16 too, but being 19 or 20 years old, you're not usually scared of these things, nor do you even think about them. But I was sleeping in that bed, and I remember it was a full moon. I remember specifically because it was actually bright in the room, even though it was middle of the nighttime. And as I was starting to fall asleep, I had got hot, so I stood up and I walked around, went downstairs, got a drink, came back upstairs. And when I had laid back down in my bed, the roof of the peak, I guess, is close to my face. So any sound in the room would actually be, it was kind of, you could hear it reflected off of that peak and into my face, more or less. The guy that his house I was staying at was downstairs. His bedroom was downstairs. And there was a bathroom downstairs and a bathroom upstairs. So as I was laying there trying to go back to sleep because it was hot in there, I basically heard one footstep. And when you hear a footstep, it's not like a clop of like a shoe. It was more just like pressure and like a thud pressure, I guess. So like you still get the thud, but then there's a creak because it was an old house. And my face was pointed towards the peak of the house, I guess. And I just heard this incredibly large breath in my ear. Just one long inhale, I guess you could say, like, and yeah, goosebumps. And at 20 years old, like, I was damn near crying for sure. But eventually I got the courage to look over. Like, there was no footsteps after that single footstep, and I know that the guy that was in the house wouldn't have to come up there. So yeah, I can't really explain that one, but it in a later age, it freaked the crap out of me. So that'd be it for my paranormals, I guess.
Is there anyone else who wants to turn before we close the episode?
Yeah, I just remembered something that happened to me. On my 21st birthday, I went on a friend's family camping trip. It was more like a mini festival, but it was a family thing, so we could get away with renting a public park for free. And it wasn't even because we were gypping them; they just didn't allow any kind of like events. But it truly was a family thing. It just was family and friends. So a lot of crazy shit happened. I won't go into, just having fun and stuff. But that night, 2 of my friends were crazy enough to like, oh, let's go off into the woods, man. This is a great idea. I'm like, you guys are crazy. It's like, it's so fucking dark that I don't care what flashlight you got. It's not good enough. And they came back and they're like, come out, come out. And they didn't even tell me why. And I went out. They freaking told me to come out because they saw a leopard. And when I got out in the middle of the forest, I literally freaked out on them so hard once they told me why I came out that I was yelling. And this supposed cougar ran right past us, turned around, looked right at us, and just faded into fucking thin air. A little lump was in my pants, and I fucking booked it back to my campsite. It was probably the most scared I've ever been in my life. It was a good 21st birthday.
Sure.
Well, that's a good story. Does anyone else have one they want to add to the paranormal experiences podcast?
Sure. Real young boy sleeping in a farmhouse. The toilets would flush randomly throughout the nights, and cabinet doors would open and slam shut. That's about it.
Well, I have one, but I'm not sure if it was paranormal or maybe it was just me getting hacked by on my computer. It actually happened last night. So it was like 2 a.m. and it's late and my lights are off. Were off and but the room was bright because of the monitor and I have a RGB keyboard, so it's relatively speaking bright. So I was watching YouTube videos, and then my computer just went off on itself. So it just started opening up like programs and like try to open up task manager and see what's going on, and like it just turned the manager after I opened it, it just turned off by itself. And so yeah, it was kind of creepy, but maybe I was just getting hacked and someone gained like remote access or whatever.
I
Does
do actually
anyone else?
have one that kind of it sounds like Belushi's story, ironically, but it wasn't something I experienced. It's just something that's held in my family as something that many people witnessed at once. There was a wedding at a small church in the middle of nowhere, very very old church, and my uncle was outside with some of the friends of the family smoking a cigarette, and they kept hearing these noises, and they couldn't tell where these noises were coming from. And it's really dark. There's no outside lights for these churches. You know, they're lucky enough to have electricity inside the church. But as they were smoking, one of the guys kind of was standing there, just like motionless, staring at the roof of the church. And when he eventually got the courage to say something, he just said, "Look." And my uncle says he looked up with everybody else, and they saw basically two red eyes on like a cat-like body. It was some kind of cat-like body, and he said it was weird because there was no way for the eyes, like, you know, when you shine a light in a cat's eyes, it'll reflect a little bit, but there was no light outside. So seeing these illuminated red eyes on like a cat silhouette, I guess you could say, on the top of this church with the moonlight and stuff, he said that was easily one of the biggest things that ever scared him. And it didn't vanish. He said that it jumped off the roof of the church, which was considerably high, and then just kind of took off into a field, but they couldn't see much. But I don't know. I like cat stories. I think they're interesting, or cat silhouettes. So
Yeah, aren't cats the keepers of the underworld or something like that in the
Ooh.
Bible?
I'll have to look into that a little bit.
No,
Well,
not in the Bible.
cats are half in, half out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Constantine said that.
They can see shit. That's why cats like randomly look at shit like nothing's, but it's like nothing's there to us.
Egyptians were big fans of cats because they believed they were connected to the afterlife or some shit like that.
Yeah. Can't imagine what cats were like back in the Egyptian days.
Fucking hairless.
Assholes.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking cats were always a-holes.
What were you gonna say, Douglas?
They're not keepers of the underworld in Egyptian mythology. I'm sorry, in the Bible. They usually have that in Egyptian mythology, and
Yeah,
that's about
okay.
it.
It's Egyptian's lore.
I have a
Ward
story
off
to
spirits or
tell.
whatever.
Go ahead.
Okay, when I was a teacher in a school, okay, there was this mass like possession. Like the whole school was like possessed by this. Like I'm not sure what it was, but they behave like tigers and stuff. They were on their four. I mean, like on their feet, like crawling like tigers. Like it was so weird. Uh, I've never like experienced it. Like I'm just like, I guess, watching what really happened at that school. It was I guess crazy and the craziest and scariest experience I ever had. So like a mass possession, you know?
Did the kids look angry, or were they like just playing, or?
No, they were like being possessed. They were like hysterical. Like the whole school was like it kind of like contagious too. Like if one student got it, the other would get. You know, like I'm like tearing up telling this story, to be honest.
That's
Yeah,
creepy.
it's crazy.
Was it
Totally
like
crazy.
a public school, or was it like a religious school?
It was a public school.
How many kids would you say were in it?
Hundreds. Like even teacher, like a few teachers got like possessed too.
That's creepy.
Yeah, I know, right?
I think we're done, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Princess. That's very creepy and very interesting. I believe in demons and all that.
Yeah.
So, does anyone else want to turn? I think everyone's had a turn now. So, shall we close this episode?
Did Alexis go?
Alexis, you want to turn?
Now
All
let's
right,
just
quit
end it.
that.
All right. Well, join us on the Roundtable Discord server, Conspiracy Theory or Politics through Discord on all social media, roundtablediscord.com. Join our Minecraft server. All right, guys. Thank you. Let's jump down to the other channel. We're up.